if you think about it, it takes a long time to heat up the ground underneath these lakes. Like Sam Rayburn is a huge reservoir. Lake turns over in the fall, and it's been warm for the last several months, right? So like we haven't had much of a winter until now, right? I've been in the deer stand sweating my butt off, beating mosquitoes off of me, and now I'm trying to go fishing and it's cold. Well, it takes a long time for that ground to heat up. So if we don't get a lot of extremely cold weather, that water at the bottom can stay warmer and actually be warmer than the surface temperature. So those bass can be down there and actually already kind of start to spawn. So that's something we haven't really totally dove into yet, but it's just kind of a theory we got. But pre-spawn techniques. So I found that these bass are spawning in a lot of areas that we didn't traditionally think that they were. Main lake stuff, main lake points, main lake flats, ridges, areas. And let me take a step back. So because we had some questions come up when Keith was doing his presentation and Lee about what are we talking about when we talk about ridges? We talk about these humps offshore, all this stuff. It's easier if you think about these lakes from a perspective of not being a lake, right? Because these are all man-made reservoirs here in Texas with the exception of Caddo. So think about it in your backyard. You know, think about the property that you deer hunt that you can actually see with your eyes, of the ridges and the way that the creek bottoms flow and these little flats and stuff. If you think about it from that perspective, it makes it a little bit easier. It gives you an easier mental picture of what we're talking about when we talk about these ridges and main lake points and all that stuff. Because if you can see it with your eyes, it's a little bit easier to visualize what we're talking about. And it's no different than the terrain around the lake, right? Because it's just a dammed up section of that. So these main lake points, main lake spawning areas, anything with flat, anything with a flat contour, I found they spawn on. I would say that as much as 75% of the bass, and I'm not a biologist, but this is my opinion. I would say that 75% of the bass never go to the bank to spawn. Never. They spawn where places that we didn't even, I think we've only been seeing a very, very small percentage of the bass spawning over the years until now. And so I want to identify these staging areas and these potential spawning areas. And I want to target the biggest bass in the lake. Trying to win tournaments, trying to beat Lee, trying to beat Keith. I want to catch bigger fish than them. I want to find where those bigger fish are going to be. Now, granted, there's going to be a small percentage of them that are going to swim in the back of these creeks and spawn in these traditional areas that we always knew about. But there's also a large percentage of them. I think the biggest fish in the lake, in my opinion, never make that transition to go back there. I think a lot of those, especially older fish, they're smart, they're really boat weary. They know, like traditionally, every year in March, that's where all the boats are going. And a big 10 to 12 pound fish, she's not going to swim back here and get in the middle of them. She's like a big deer. She's not big for no reason. An old deer's not old for no reason. They're smart. They're smarter than the rest while they're able to live and survive. They're not going to swim back here and mix all them boats and try to spawn if they don't have to. I think that they've kind of naturally, that's just their way of beating us. You know, it's just, and they're doing it for a living. Like I said earlier, it's their life depends on it. And so the ones that are a little bit smarter than the rest, well, they allow them to get a little bit bigger than the rest. So I'm gonna try to target these fish on the main lake more than anything. Places where they can easily move in and out. And these are a couple examples of that, right? So these are all some clips from Rayburn, just some pictures from Rayburn that I took. So let's start over here on the left, okay? So this is actually a picture from out in the dead center of Sam Rayburn. This is in the Black Forest, all the way to the left here. So this is a flat out here, and there's stumps covering all throughout here. And I went through there last year with the jig, pitching at fish on these stumps, and they were spawning. You could see some of them were garden fry, some of them were still on beds, and there were bass spawning all out through here. And for years, we thought we were catching those fish on a spinnerbait or catching them on a crankbait. We thought they were just out there staging or living. They're actually spawning, without a shadow of a doubt.